With me tonight in Washington, a Democrat who sits on both the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Foreign Relations Committee as well, Virginia Senator Tim Kaine. And thank you, Senator, because I do think one question is who is telling the president this, and if it's the Iranian regime who is claiming they have stopped killing people, killing protesters, do you think the president should take them at their word?
No, he shouldn't take them at their word, but I have a little bit of a different take on the president than Maggie just described, and I have huge respect for her. She says he's figuring out the levers in Washington. Here's my take. He is bored and concerned about his efforts at home. The economy is suffering. People are paying more for health care and energy and child care and groceries and housing. So why not focus on external adventurism? Let's talk about Venezuela. Let's talk about Greenland and Denmark. Let's talk about Iran or Nigeria or Cuba or Colombia or Mexico. This foreign adventurism is a bored president and, frankly, a somewhat frightened president who is really worried about the economic conditions at home, trying to change the subject.
So you think because of his own domestic issues, whether that be the economy or, what we've been covering so closely playing out with ICE in Minneapolis, you think that is what's playing into what's happening with Trump abroad?
I do. And let's use Iran as an example. Why are the Iranian people protesting so heavily against this government? It's because the Iranian government, dictators, have focused for years on adventurism in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Gaza, Morocco, trying to destabilize the government in Morocco rather than meeting the needs of their own population. And after years and years of this, the Iranian public is saying, what the hell are you guys doing? Focus on us. President Trump is focusing on all of these saber-rattling adventures and uses of military force here, there, and everywhere. Meanwhile, Americans are paying more for health care, child care, energy, groceries, housing, everything, and he's not meeting their needs. And he's going to keep trying to distract. Vladimir Putin tries to distract the Russians from their, internal woes by invading Ukraine. Iran's doing it from going after everybody rather than meeting the needs of their populace. Trump's trying to do a distraction campaign, but I don't think Virginians, and I know Americans, are not distracted from his ignorance, ignoring what they're asking him to do, what he promised to do as a candidate.
Well, and Senator, obviously Iran has been something that the president was hyper-focused on. I mean, this was a big issue of his in his first term. He struck them over the summer with their nuclear facilities. You were against military action here in this situation. You said recently you didn't think that was a good idea and that it would be a mistake.
Yep.
But given he told protesters that the United States would come to their help, to their aid, that help was on the way. I mean, what do you think the message is to them tonight?
Well, look, the United States deposed the democratically elected prime minister of Iran back in the 1950s, and that memory is very, very long. And here's what the U.S. intervention in Iran or Venezuela or other nations do. There are dictators, horrible people, the Iranian mullahs and Maduro in Venezuela. They want to blame their mismanagement and their problems on the United States intervening in their politics and economies. That's what they want to do. The public says, wait a minute, it's you that's mismanaging. You have screwed up our country. You've turned us from, an energetic, innovative country, and Venezuela was, and Iran was, into like a basket case. And the opposition grows because of the leadership's failures. But when the U.S. intervenes, the leadership says, we're only suffering because of U.S. intervention. Yeah. And they change the subject from their own failures to the U.S. intervention. Don't give the Iranian leaders the ability to shift the blame. Don't give Venezuelan dictators the ability to shift the blame.
Well, and Senator, can I ask you on Venezuela? Because last week there were 5 Republicans who had voted to advance something you put forward, which was an effort that would basically curb the president's war powers. in Venezuela. Today we saw something very different happen where two of those Republicans who had supported it withdrew their support. That was Josh Hawley and Todd Young, which meant that your resolution was ultimately blocked. Why do you think they changed their support? I mean, obviously they had conversations with the White House and a big pressure campaign, but what is your read on that?
Well, here's what I think, but you should ask them. After we successfully repudiated the unauthorized war actions of President Trump last week, he canceled a second invasion of Venezuela within 12 hours. And then he gave a bunch of commitments to senators about, okay, we'll finally have public hearings on this, which we haven't done. And we'll commit no boots on the ground in Venezuela without a formal congressional authorization, which they hadn't done. The White House was so focused on not allowing a public debate about this military adventurism in Venezuela that they made commitments to restrain, which they weren't willing to do until we filed our resolution. It ended up, yes, two Republicans backed off with these commitments, and they brought J.D. Vance, the vice president, in the past.
Yeah.
He had been a kind of an anti-military intervention guy, an isolationist. Now he's with the forever unauthorized war crowd. But we got commitments out of the administration that we wouldn't have gotten without filing war powers resolutions. We'll monitor the commitments, but we're going to file a lot more war powers resolutions.
Yeah, and I'm sure the vice president would dispute your characterization. But Senator Tim Kaine, thank you for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.